welcome to episode 5 of the Driving the Difference show. With me this morning is 3 guests from the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. First is Paul Simionato, Director, Southern Region. Welcome, Paul. If you would like to just tell some of our guests this morning a little bit about your role at the NHVR, and then we'll move on to a couple of things happening at the moment.
Yeah, welcome, Jackie. So my role is Director of the Southern Region of Operations for the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. So what I do is I have staff who are safety compliance officers who work in the various states, being ACT, South Australia, Tasmania and Victoria. These frontline officers that the industry and drivers and operators will see on a daily basis. And we're committed, obviously, to enforcing the legislation and obviously keeping all of our drivers, operators and the community safe on the roads.
Great. So that's quite a large area of operation, and I know you have a team in each of those states, I believe, or is that just in Victoria that you have the team?
No, I have teams in, as I said, South Australia. That's just not in Adelaide, it's in the regional areas.
Yeah.
Similarly, in Tasmania, we have 2 offices there and also one in the ACT, and predominantly the workforce in Victoria at this stage.
Great, very, very good. And recently we had some changes to the COR rules. Would you just like to speak a little to that?
COR, as I said, look, it was a law that was introduced, a legal concept is what it's called. It's in the Heavy Vehicle National Law, and it's all about on-road safety, requiring all those parties in the chain of responsibility to behave in ways that ensure that safe vehicles with safe drivers and safe loads are on the road at all times. As I said, it's one shared responsibility. It requires everyone to do their part. So one of the fundamental principles of the chain of responsibility is that any party in the chain who can influence or control that transport activity is responsible for the transport activity. This means that a party's level and nature of responsibility depends on their capacity to control, eliminate or minimise the risk. It's something that's not new, Jackie. COR has been around effectively in some of the other states for some period of time who haven't transitioned over to the Heavy Vehicle National Law, but it became effective in 2014 and updated in October 2018.
So it's, and before, of course, before this happened, the onus was solely on the driver. So this has made it a much safer initiative by involving everybody and making everybody responsible. So it's a much more equitable way of keeping all road transport safe and everybody safe on our roads. So can you just give us a little bit before we move on to what we're really going to talk about those changes that came into effect in, I think, 2018? There was a couple of updates then. Was it 2018?
Yeah, so those changes affected, like you mentioned, it's a shared responsibility that the focus wasn't so much on the driver. We're talking about everyone involved in that supply chain, anyone from an operator, from a consigner, a packer, a scheduler. Everyone's sharing that responsibility, similar to our WHS type legislation. So as you mentioned before, a lot more broader, everyone's committed, everyone's aligned, everyone's doing their part for road safety.
Of course, and we also recently added, of course, that the vehicle standards has come into that. So that's meant that we can actually look at the fact that companies are maintaining their vehicles and trailers to make them safe on the roads. And this is something, of course, that really needs to happen because that's the first thing to go in hard economic times, in lots of times, is that people unfortunately are forced then to look at ways to save money, and that's one way they sometimes think that they'll miss out on the servicing or repairs. So that's something that's recently been added and it's working very well. I think that everybody then takes notice of what they're actually loading and unloading and how they're doing that. So I think that's been a great thing that's been added to it. Now, what we were going to talk about, obviously we're on Import-Export TV, so we'll talk, and there's been a lot in the news lately about having import containers coming into Australia that aren't packed correctly, and then they're causing issues on our roads. So would you like to talk about that and how we can fix that issue, if there is a fix for that issue?
Yeah, really good point. containerised freighters, there's certainly something different about it, and there's certainly some challenges for industry, Jackie. As I said, look, it presents that unique challenge to a supply chain. In a traditional general freight arrangement, driver and operator often have a considerable influence on how their vehicles are loaded and the freight restrained. In a containerised freight situation, the driver and operator may have less control because there's lots of different factors. I'll just go through some of them. Containers are often loaded and packed outside Australia. The parties with the most influence and control over container loading and packing are packers and consigners. However, overseas parties are outside the Australian jurisdiction, so obligations are difficult to enforce. And the issue is also compounded where the safety standards of the country of origin don't match those in Australia, which is a very good regulated industry in that respect. Once again, containers are often loaded and packed without the driver present. This removes the driver's ability to influence and control how the container is packed, the driver's ability to physically inspect the packing to identify deficiencies and hazards. An example would be like a higher centre of gravity or inadequate load restraint that the driver can't see. Then we've got the other issue of container loading and packing is awfully difficult for someone to inspect after loading. There's some reasons about that. Some of the port precincts have been slow to make space and facilities available for drivers to inspect containers before departure. And to effectively inspect container packing, containers often require full or partial unloading to gain adequate visibility. And obviously, customs and some of the biosecurity protocols mean that some containers can only be opened under controlled conditions, which is generally at the container's destination.
That's correct. So do you think there is a solution to inspecting them before they leave the wharf, or, you know, for the driver to be able to see how that container is, does the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator have any thoughts on that, do you think, before they take them out on roads?
There's a number of solutions. Look, I'll just talk about some of the risks there, Jackie, about sort of the whole container issues is effectively, obviously you've got some issues of unbalanced loading. I mentioned some high centre of gravity, some inadequate load restraint. And we know from a recent report that truck rollovers involving some containers is an issue. And in fact, there's significant on-road instances involving container-laden vehicles, probably 36% more likely to result in a rollover.
Yeah. Paul, we just have to stop there. Thank you for joining us at the Driving the Difference show. We'll be back with the next segment in just a few moments. Thank you.
A lot of people think being a supercar driver is dangerous, but there are thousands of drivers who experience far more dangerous conditions every day for 10 hours or more. Truck drivers. Do you know one of the most common mistakes car drivers make on the road? Chances are you've done it and you didn't even realise. One of the most common accidents in Australia is when a car driver tries to overtake a turning truck. So I'm here with Kerry, an experienced truck driver, and we're on a mission to show Australians how to drive safer on our roads around trucks. Let's go. Let's rock. So Kerry, sitting up here, you get a real appreciation for just how massive this truck is. I guess one of the real annoying things would be people trying to sneak up the inside and get past you all the time, especially in traffic like this.
Especially on the left-hand side or down the passenger side of the truck. That's where we have the least amount of vision, and that's where people often sneak up. And when we make a left-hand turn, we usually will be in the right-hand lane. And that's because it takes 2 lanes for us to make an effective left-hand turn.
So Kerry, if you could give some advice to a car driver about driving safely around trucks, what would it be?
That one's easy, Garth. We need space to keep you safe.
Welcome back to the Driving the Difference show. We're here with the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. My second guest is Stephen Miller, the Director of Service Delivery and Access Permits at the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. Welcome, Stephen. Thank you for joining us here this morning. It would have been lovely in person, but this is what it is. We're just going to talk a little bit today about access permits, and especially for international access when they're dealing with that. And obviously the permits have been a bit of an issue over time with everything that's going on, and then a little bit about the portal. But if you could just tell us a little bit about your role to start with, that would be great.
Yeah, certainly, and thanks for the time today to have a chat, especially about all these things. The more we can talk to the industry, the better. And you're right, it has been an area of contention. As you said, I'm the Director of Service Delivery. I was brought on to the NHVR mid last year, and the idea behind that was to bring all the non-on-road service delivery teams under one banner. So you're quite right, under myself at the moment I have the access team, the permit team, and that's a team of 50 people split between Brisbane and Adelaide, who handle up to around 10,000 permit applications a month. And I also have the accreditation team, or the NHVAS. The accreditation team consists of about 19 people, and we manage around 4,000 different operators that are accredited under that scheme.
That's great. And with the access permits, you do the oversize over mass and all the other permits as well?
Yeah, that's correct. And we're constantly tweaking that. We had all our return of delegations from the states, really, except Western Australia and Northern Territory, come back to us October last year. So we're at what we would call full capacity now. Yep. We do have the team split into different permits. We have Class 1, oversize over mass, SPVs, cranes, amusement equipment. We also have a dedicated PBS team, which is a big growth area at the moment.
Of course.
Those unique builds coming through to get more on the road in less loads. So we certainly break the team up in that way, but we're constantly looking at how we can improve that. As an example, we've recently set up a smaller sub-team around special projects and superloads, so that we have a dedicated team. One of their main projects at the moment is the Brisbane Cross River Tunnel that's being bored. So, how do we get a big piece of drilling equipment from the port across the gateway into where it needs to be? So we've got specialist people working on that as well.
Of course. And with a lot of the large equipment that may be coming in from overseas, do you find that they don't ask for the permits to travel that through to wherever it has to go, whether it's to the mines or to a special project, until it arrives in Australia and then there's a hold-up? Or do they start that process before it leaves wherever it's manufactured, Germany or Hong Kong or wherever?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, the equipment coming through the ports. We do see those, oversized cranes, agricultural equipment, flat racks with mining equipment, for example, or these big project pieces coming in. The ports themselves are okay. They generally have a pretty high level of load that you can carry within the port district, and a lot of those guys have pre-approvals. But you're right, where we do see the issues is on those routes, getting it to where it needs to be to do the work, or getting it to a depot. And we do see a lot of companies who fall into problems engaging with us too late. Yes. And the best advice we can give is to engage early. A lot of this stuff is unique, and engage early with us with the specifications of the piece of equipment, where you want it to travel. A lot of this stuff is really unique to the road managers we deal with at a state and a local level. So they do take sometimes a little bit more time to assess it, and we do have to give them a little bit more assistance to do that. The main thing, even with the people who engage with us early, with one of the main issues we see that pops up is that they give us the height, the width, the weight, the dimensions and the mass of this equipment as it comes in, but when it actually gets here and gets put on the truck, it's different.
Yes.
It might be a little bit wider or a little bit heavier. So that permit we've applied for doesn't really cover it, and we have to go through that process again. And obviously us and any customers out there and road managers don't want to see a piece of equipment sitting there not being used by these companies. So all I could say is really make sure that if it's from a manufacturer, if you're buying second-hand from overseas, that you really do iterate to them that height, width and weight and the dimensions they're giving you of that piece of equipment that you're buying is correct.
Yeah. So engage early and engage accurately.
Correct.
Is your advice to having that ready for when the delivery actually takes place. So that seems like pretty good advice to do that, because there is some massive stuff moving around the country at the moment, and obviously we've had some huge things happening with the pandemic and everything, with lots of other stuff. Permitting's been a nightmare for a lot of people. So
that's correct, and we're cognizant of, with COVID, that equipment's arriving later than expected, or it's been delayed. You know, we saw recently the issue in there's a ship stuck in the canal holding everything up as well. So we really want to help. We really want to help operators get that piece of equipment to where it needs to be quicker. But that is engage early, engage with the right details, and it's not normally your typical truck and dog, or your typical A or B double that councils see all the time. It's something unique and new that we have.
Exactly, yeah, for sure. And the other thing we were talking about is the use of the portal, the NHVR portal. So are you finding that is being used well, and that it is easy to use? I must admit I should have tried it before I came on, but I didn't. So
it's like anything, I suppose. How much you use it, it really comes down to how well you use it. It is something that's new for industry. Obviously, we've moved away from the paperwork into the portal. Those people who use it a lot, we find use it very effectively. I'm not going to say that it doesn't need improvement. We've certainly got a whole range of programs going on here, systems-wise, to improve the route planner, to improve the usability of the portal, to get more automation in the portal, so that especially around renewals and when you're applying for permits on pre-approved routes, that they're almost issued instantaneously. But a lot of that work's happening in the next 12 to 18 months. Again, the main thing I'd say is, if you're having issues with the portal, we're here to help. So, if you're having issues with the route, with a plan, get in touch with us early. We can help you walk through that route and plan the best possible route and have the best possible chance of getting that approved by road managers.
Yep, I think that's the thing. I think the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator has been very approachable. I think they engage very well with the operators, and I think that's the narrative that's been put out by John and his team, and everybody's been very cooperative around that. And I think the more we engage, the better it is for everybody, and that's the way we improve things. And I think that's been, as long as we continue to do that, things will improve, and your side of it as well as ours, as the operators. I think that's the only way it goes forward, is having those conversations, having that communication, and even in things like this, where it gets out to more and more people. And I think that's they've been very on the front foot with that, and I think that as long as that continues, and I'm sure it will, because it's just been moving forward all the time, I think you've got everything's going to work really, really well.
Yeah, and I'll be quite honest. The service delivery team, the original name for that team was meant to be the processes and transactions team, but we changed it to service delivery because we really wanted to focus on being, we throw the terms internally here around a new age regulator and customer experience a lot, and really be there to not necessarily regulate and tell operators what to do, but to be there to help them navigate the network, help them navigate the road managers, and do that as efficiently as possible as well. So we're really making that transition, and have been over the last 6 to 7 months into that. We're here to help. Yep. We're here to help operators. We're here to help road managers. We're here to help people get heavy vehicles on the road and working, and do in a safe and controlled manner.
I think that's a much better. I think it's a much better name for the department. Service delivery teams are so much better. Thank you for joining us this morning, Stephen. It's been great to have you, and I look forward to meeting you again soon. Thank
definitely.
you.
Happy to come on any time, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you for watching the Driving the Difference show. We'll be back with the next segment in just a few moments. Thank you.
A lot of people think being a supercar driver is dangerous, but there are thousands of drivers who experience far more dangerous conditions every day for 10 hours or more. Truck drivers. Do you know one of the most common mistakes car drivers make on the road? Chances are you've done it and you didn't even realise. One of the most common accidents in Australia is when a car driver tries to overtake a turning truck. So I'm here with Kerry, an experienced truck driver, and we're on a mission to show Australians how to drive safer on our roads around trucks. Let's go. Let's rock. So Kerry, sitting up here, you get a real appreciation for just how massive this truck is. I guess one of the real annoying things would be people trying to sneak up the inside and get past you all the time, especially in traffic like this.
Especially on the left-hand side or down the passenger side of the truck. That's where we have the least amount of vision, and that's where people often sneak up. And when we make a left-hand turn, we usually will be in the right-hand lane. And that's because it takes 2 lanes for us to make an effective left-hand turn.
So Kerry, if you could give some advice to a car driver about driving safely around trucks, what would it be?
That one's easy, Garth. We need space to keep you safe.
Welcome back to the Driving Different Show. We're here with the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. And welcome to Kim Daniel, the Director of National Compliance. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning to you. So how are you doing this morning?
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, it's a nice day in Brisbane.
Nice day here as well. So this morning we're just going to talk a little bit about your role, Kim, with the NHVR, and also a little bit about the on-road compliance and the new group that you've formed in-house of Women in Compliance. So if you just want to talk a little bit about your role to begin with, and we'll follow on from there.
Sure. Well, I'm the Director of National Compliance Services, so I look after things that are national. So one of the objectives of the NHVR is to have a harmonised and consistent approach. That's why we were formed, so that there isn't all these state differences that affect productivity. So my role is if you have a national service, that it is harmonised and consistent. And so that's kind of where we are. So you would have met Paul Simionato. He's the Director of Southern Region. So I make sure that we have policies and procedures, that there's no difference between what happens to you in Tasmania and what happens to you at the ACT, that level of intervention and the outcome is the same. So that's kind of my role, and I do that through I have a policy and procedures area that reports to me. And we also have the national compliance section. So when you have big national-based problems such as fatigue, we run all the national big operations. And I also have the offence management unit. So if you make a complaint about an infringement or you want it reviewed, I look after that, and also the safety cam people, because that eventually will become national as well.
So, Kim, with the employing more women in the compliance team, are you finding that is making the on-road compliance less confrontational? Do you find that adds a different element to it on the road?
Well, we're not actually there yet, so I can't make any broad sweeping statements. It's a strategy, and what we know is that there are significant benefits to having a gender diverse workforce on the road. We know that from the examples of police agencies across the state. There are published research reports. And what we also know is that the NHVR, the role of a safety and compliance officer at the NHVR is going to change. So what we've done is that we've actually transitioned on-road staff from the registrar, so the people who ran the driver and licensing areas. And what they were concerned about is the infrastructure, that the vehicle was of a correct weight so you didn't ruin the pavement. And they were concerned that the driver and the vehicle were compliant in terms of the vehicle and the driver. So what we're saying is that we're an industry regulator, and so that job will now change. We're going to need a much more diverse workforce with a much broader range of skills in the not too far distant future, particularly as our risk profiles and our intelligence-led risk-based enforcement models start to get up and start to work. You'll always have to have a mechanical mindset, but you won't necessarily need to be a mechanic. We'll have to have people who can go and do assurance audits of safety management systems. We'll need people who can do fleet inspections. We'll also obviously need people who can make an intercept on the side of the road, but the role will be much more diverse than what it currently is. And we're moving in that direction at the moment. So, and for this reason, we think that gender diversity will bring benefits to the NHVR as it has to any other agency and professional agency, whether it be enforcement or whether it be just a government agency. Gender diversity has brought significant benefits to that agency, and that's why we formed the Women in Compliance Network.
Of course, with the Women in Compliance Network, it was thought of just as the pandemic started, and then didn't get like a lot of things got put a little bit to the back burner in 2020 because it was just was impossible to get these things off and running and get the momentum that we wanted behind those efforts, but I know it is rolling out now, and it will make a significant difference to it as we do. The other thing, of course, is although Women in Compliance is up and running, we can't just deal with gender diversity. Obviously, you'll be dealing with other sorts of diversity inside the NHVR and on the road.
And so it is one part of a inclusion strategy that the NHVR is putting together, and that's been run corporately by our people and culture team. I just lead the gender diversity part on the on-road because of the capability lift. Yeah, and we've made some really good inroads so far. We've had, even during COVID, we managed to meet by teams and we really unpick some of the issues around recruitment, and as a consequence of that, we've redesign the job description. Now we make sure that we have a female on all selection panels. We have, set up meetings where we've undertaken a cultural survey and we're looking at the cultural differences between men and women in the on-road space, because it's all right to recruit people, but if they come and they're not supported or there are significant differences in the work team or issues in the work team, then they're just going to leave. So we've actually got a plan, even though there has been COVID, and we've made some differences already.
I think you're right. I think it probably gave you a lot more time to work on that plan and to make sure it was correct right from the beginning. And as you know, my background's in compliance, and I've been doing that, especially a COR, for quite a long time, and it's really interesting to see them moving into different areas of the compliance, not just sitting behind the desk and doing that part of it, but to seeing them women take a more active role. So I think it's great. I think it's really a forward step, and I really applaud the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator in doing that. So and seeing you in your role as the national manager of that, I think the national director of that is a huge step, and I think that's amazing. And the fact that you're actually having a female on those recruitment and interview teams makes a difference as well, because often even in the gender diversity area, they then face an all-male panel, and it doesn't really show the diversity within the company that's recruiting. So that's a very forward step as well.
Well, so oftentimes you recruit. It's just recruitment bias. It's decision bias. So you recruit people who are like you. So actually having diversity on those selection panels is a great step forward, and make sure that we're expanding the skills and the capabilities that we're going to need in the future. So we're pretty pleased with that.
Yeah, and the group Women in Compliance, well, they'll obviously get support from each other and from the management team. So having that group where they can bounce ideas off each other and to get support from each other is something, because it's being formed so early, I think that is also going to be a great asset and a support for, as you say, if people aren't supported and made to feel welcome, they don't come and they don't stay. So I think having that in place is going to be a great asset for any new recruitment and for any of the ones that are already in place there. So that's something that a lot of places probably probably need to look at, that they have something like that in place before they start having a huge impact on their diversity and inclusion in their workforce, because I think it's a great idea, and we'll be looking to see how great it works, I think, because at where I work now, they have a women in leadership team that's supportive. Obviously, we haven't had them this company long, but it is there and in place, and I think that's a great asset for any company or organisation to have in place for their staff to know that it is available to them.
Yeah, we're pretty excited. We think that we can make some great inroads. We've obviously done a lot of research about other agencies and things like that, and we really understand that one of the key things to making sure whether we succeed or fail is that we have the support of the leadership, and we certainly have that at the NHVR. We have, we had one meeting where women were quite frank about the recruitment and the promotion system, and as a consequence of that, we changed that in a week. Yeah. It was just a directive, someone just said, this is what's going to happen. So when I think your leaders are behind what we're doing, it makes it much easier and it's better for everyone concerned.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, thank you, Kim, and I look forward to meeting the Women in Compliance team at a future date. Thank you for coming in this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching the Driving the Difference show. We look forward to having you back with us for future episodes. Thank you.
A lot of people think being a supercar driver is dangerous, but there are thousands of drivers who experience far more dangerous conditions every day for 10 hours or more. Truck drivers. Do you know one of the most common mistakes car drivers make on the road? Chances are you've done it and you didn't even realise. One of the most common accidents in Australia is when a car driver tries to overtake a turning truck. So I'm here with Kerry, an experienced truck driver, and we're on a mission to show Australians how to drive safer on our roads around trucks. Let's go. Let's roll.
So Kerry, sitting up here, you get a real appreciation for just how massive this truck is. I guess one of the real annoying things would be people trying to sneak up the inside and get past you all the time, especially in traffic like this.
Especially on the left-hand side or down the passenger side of the truck. That's where we have the least amount of vision, and that's where people often sneak up. And when we make a left-hand turn, we usually will be in the right-hand lane. And that's because it takes 2 lanes for us to make an effective left-hand turn.
So Kerry, if you could give some advice to a car driver about driving safely around trucks, what would it be?
That one's easy, Garth. We need space to keep you safe.